This flowchart illustrates a psychological mechanism known as conditioned compliance. From childhood, we are taught to obey specific visual triggers. When you see a uniform, a shiny badge, or flashing lights, your brain's normal threat assessment process simply shuts down. You are wired to offer immediate, unquestioning submission to those symbols. Because of this wiring, these symbols provide a baseline feeling of safety, even during stressful events like a traffic stop. But look at the pathway on the right. When a predator acquires these same symbols, they create a false positive. They hijack that ingrained trust to gain complete control over a victim before the brain even realizes it needs to evaluate for danger. It creates a very specific, paralyzing terror. The realization that the person your brain is screaming at you to rely on for protection is the exact person intending to do you harm. Predators exploit this mental loophole to systematically separate victims from the public eye. By weaponizing the symbols of law enforcement, they engineer situations that escalate danger across 3 distinct stages of geographic isolation. The first stage targets public spaces that offer temporary isolation. Imagine driving down an unlit, completely empty stretch of Interstate 80 at 2 in the morning. There are no witnesses, no nearby homes, and miles of dark asphalt in every direction. Suddenly, a burst of red and blue lights fills your rearview mirror. A blinding spotlight hits your side window. This sensory overload is entirely intentional. It forces you to pull over out of reflex, while completely obscuring the identity of the person walking up to your door. But the illusion usually has flaws. In one documented encounter on this interstate, the driver noticed the officer's uniform lacked any department patches. Look at this comparison. A heavy-duty, standard-issue police shoulder radio on the left next to the cheap, plastic civilian walkie-talkie spotted on the impersonator's shoulder. When the driver hesitated to roll down the window, the man's authoritative demeanor snapped into aggression. He reached for his belt. The driver didn't wait to see what he was grabbing. They slammed the gas pedal and escaped down the highway. This is visual compliance at work. By relying on the isolation of a dark, empty road, the predator makes the victim feel legally trapped within their own vehicle before a single word is spoken. The second stage breaches the ultimate zone of presumed safety, the private home. It's a rainy night, you are inside your apartment, and someone knocks on the door. Through the peephole, you see a badge. The man outside claims he's conducting a welfare check. When you hesitate, he threatens to arrest you for obstructing an active police investigation. He relies entirely on social compliance, pressuring you to open the door just to avoid breaking the law. The moment the victim complies and lets him inside, the predator cuts off the outside world. He pulls the living room blind shut, and then he locks you inside your own apartment with him. A psychological standoff begins. He blocks the only exit and starts asking invasive personal questions. Realizing she is trapped, the victim subtly reaches toward her wrist and triggers the SOS function on her smartwatch. Minutes later, the sound of real sirens echoes down the street. The man panics, unlocks the door, and sprints into the rain. Police later determined the badge he used to breach the home was nothing more than a cheap costume prop. Home invasions executed under the guise of police work are highly effective because they turn your civic responsibility against you. The predator forces you to weigh your fear of legal consequences against your own instinct for self-preservation. The final stage is the dead end, a deep woodland back road at 3 in the morning, miles from the nearest town, with absolutely zero cellular service. A driver rounds a bend to find a dark police cruiser parked diagonally, blocking both lanes. A man in a dark uniform approaches the window, saying a bridge is washed out ahead. The driver has no choice but to bring the car to a full stop. Then comes the demand for physical compliance. Citing a fake emergency protocol, the man orders the driver to hand over their vehicle keys, a move that systematically strips them of their mobility and ensures they cannot flee. When the man retreats to his vehicle, the driver steps out to ask a question. Peering through the glass of the dark cruiser, they see this. The dashboard is entirely gutted. There is no radio, no dispatch laptop, just jagged, empty mounting holes. It's a decommissioned shell bought at an auction. The driver suddenly hears heavy footsteps slowly circling them in the pitch-black darkness. Realizing the reality of the situation, they abandon their car entirely and sprint blindly into the surrounding woods to hide. In extreme geographic isolation, you lose your ability to communicate and your ability to flee. When those elements are gone, blind compliance is no longer a legal obligation, it is a lethal trap. Law enforcement exists to maintain order and protect the public, but the physical symbols we rely on to identify them, the badges, the light bars, the uniforms, are just costumes, and those costumes are dangerously easy for anyone to acquire and weaponize. In these moments of geographic vulnerability, your survival depends on trusting your visceral instincts over the visual presence of a badge. Because the next time you are driving down a lonely stretch of road and strobe lights flare up in your rearview mirror to demand your compliance, you cannot be entirely sure who is stepping out of the vehicle behind you.